Okay, everybody. Well, it's turned 3 o'clock, and I can see lots of people joining at the moment, but I think we should make a start. So it's with great pleasure that I welcome you all to this year's iCeGS annual lecture. And in a moment, I'm going to ask Professor Siobhan Neary to formally welcome Marcelo, who's going to deliver the lecture. But before we do, I've got a few points that I'd like to go through with you. So it's normally at this, I'm standing at the front of a lecture theatre, waving my arms around and pointing to the fire escapes and the loos. But obviously, being a virtual event, I don't have to do that. But there are some other things that I do need to cover with you. Just to let you know that I am recording this session, and the recording of the actual lecture is made available through the iCeGS website as soon as we've managed to process that. But I just wanted to run through a few things here. So here's the agenda. After Siobhan has introduced Marcelo and he's given his lecture, we will facilitate some questions. And then Professor Tristram Hooley will be providing the vote of thanks, and we hope to do this by about 4:10 here. Now you'll see at the top of the slide there's a hashtag, and we will invite you to use this throughout the lecture and afterwards to tell people some of the points that you're hearing and that are connecting with. So that will be a really good way of promoting the lecture. And you'll also see a QR code in the corner of the slides as well. And I will explain what this is about. I've covered it already. So we are actually using Padlet to take questions and to share resources for this lecture. And one of the reasons we've decided to do this is because the link that we've given you to Padlet will still be accessible after the lecture, so you will be able to go down into that resource and to download any links and things like that that you might wish to share from the lecture, passing sort of resources around. But also it helps us to moderate the questions as well. So you should be able to do that with your phone. Go straight into Padlet and you'll see there something. I'll take the screenshot of it. You just need to click on the little button here. A little screen comes up and you put either a link or your questions or a comment in there, and it will stream those down in a long line, and we'll be able to pick those up later. Obviously, it is possible to use the chat facility in this webinar as well, and you can do that by clicking on the little lilac lozenge that you'll find on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. That pops out, and at the bottom of that pop out you'll find a little speech bubble. If you click on there, you will be able to just introduce yourself or something like that if that's what you want to do. Okay, so if there's no questions, I'm actually going to now hand over to Professor Siobhan Neary, who's head of iCeGS, who's going to do the welcome. So over to you, Siobhan.
Thanks, Nikki, and apologies to those of you who just joined us. It is incredibly windy here, and we are halfway up a 9-story tower, so you can hear the wind billowing every now and again. So apologies if you do hear that. Really excited to be with you all today. We have an international audience, which we're really pleased about. We've got colleagues joining us today from Australia, Brazil, Canada, Egypt, Germany, Greece, Hungary, India, Ireland, Kenya, Kosovo, Malta, Nigeria, Pakistan, Uganda, and the US, as far as we are aware. If you're with us from any other country, please do introduce yourself in the chat and tell us where else we've got participants from today. Unfortunately, as Nikki said, we're not in one of our lecture theatres where we eventually offer you mulled wine and a mince pie. I think I must now owe virtual mince pies to hundreds of people because we haven't been able to give them out for the last couple of years. But The other side of that is that being able to provide and offer our lecture online means that, you know, we can welcome people from around the world, and I think that is incredibly important. I think one of the real benefits for us over the last couple of years has been the opening up of so much CPD and access to so many colleagues across the world. I think that has been a huge benefit, and I think it has moved events such as this and other conferences from being, you know, a privilege to be able to attend in terms of having the time and the resource to physically get here, to being much more accessible and egalitarian. And I think that is an important point for all of us within the sector. The first iCeGS lecture, the inaugural lecture, occurred in 1999, and we're so pleased that that has become an annual fixture. And for many people, I know I've said this other years, people say when the annual lecture happens, they know Christmas is here. It does feel a little bit like that. The lecture has become a flagship event for us at iCeGS. And it offers us an opportunity to take time out and to think and reflect on some of the big issues that are impacting on career guidance and development. Each annual lecture offers us a chance to showcase and consider new conceptualizations of career guidance, and to open up and expose our thinking, to challenge, as well as to consider how we move forward. And I think that is an important element of the time we have together today. Social inequality has always been a core element and a core campaign within the career guidance sector. But much of the work that we are all involved in as practitioners originates from theory, which has often been almost predominantly westernized from Western philosophies and Western ways of thinking, and also white and male. And although there has been some movement in this over recent years, it's important that the work that we do is grounded in theory that reflects the lived experience of those that we work with, and this is an area that we are incredibly keen to promote. So I'm absolutely thrilled to invite Marcelo to join us today. Dr Marcelo Alfonso Ribeiro is from the University of Sao Paulo, and he is going to focus on constructing contextualized theories in career guidance and counselling and North-South intercultural dialogue. What he's going to present to us is that there a growing awareness of the need to address the disadvantages experienced by individuals living in and from countries described as being the Global South. That term is often used to identify countries which are less economically developed and therefore lower income countries. One of the ways of addressing disadvantage is through strong processes of career development. However, there is an inequality, not just in the level of provision, but also in the theories which support practice. In this lecture, Marcelo will consider the relations between power and the production of knowledge, and the discrepancy between theory and reality in career guidance and counselling. Marcelo Ribeiro has been a career development practitioner since 1993. He is now an associate professor at the Social and Work Psychology Department at the University of Sao Paulo, Brazil, where he is doctoral supervisor and coordinator of the Career Counselling Service. He is a member of the UNESCO Chair in Lifelong Guidance and Counselling and the Brazilian representative of the Latin American Network of Professionals in Career Guidance and Counselling. We are incredibly privileged to have you to come and speak to us today, and we look forward to your thoughts and what you're going to share with us. So I'm going to hand over to Marcelo, and Nikki, I think you're managing the slides.
Thank you, Siobhan. And just to welcome Marcelo to give his lecture now. So over to you, Marcelo. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. First, I would like to greet you more and all the team of the International Center for Guidance Studies from the University of Derby for inviting me to this annual lecture. It's important to say that it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with all of you. My speech is inspired and grounded in three distinct kinds of experiences. First, the articulation between practice and research. By the practice conducted in our career counseling service, I run a career counseling service in my university, and the research developing the master's and PhD programs in social and work psychology at University of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Second, constant changes with researchers from a wide range of countries through the UNESCO chair in lifelong guidance and counseling. And third, by the challenges generated by living, acting, and researching in a context marked by social inequality, working informality, and vulnerability. That's quite different from the context in which the mainstream theories of career guidance and counseling field have been produced. In that vein, I will discuss the issue of constructing contextualized theories in career guidance and counseling, proposing a North-South intercultural dialogue for achieving that goal. From the outset, it's necessary to stress that I intend to postulate questions, then to provide answers to challenge your ways of thinking and researching. To show a little bit about Brazilian culture, we can see the most important picture of a Brazilian painting named Abapuru, which was painted by Tarsila do Amaral. Tarsila described the subject of the painting as a monstrous solitary figure, enormous feet sitting on a green plain, and the hands supporting the minuscule red, in a front of cactus exploding in absurd flower. This monstrous figure represents a human being in interaction with nature as the inspiration for my lecture today. And this is the lecture program and the topics that I intend to try to discuss in a brief discussion with all of you. I think this lecture will be an intercultural endeavor, but also a chance for intercultural dialogue, challenge of interculturality, and changes engendered by intercultural dialogue. This lecture is a project of intercultural dialogue, since I come from a very distinct context from the most part of you. First, let me present the Brazilian working world. According to the International Labour Organization, recent data on Brazilian economically active population show that 4% were employed, 4% worked in an unprotected and unregulated job in the informal sector, 15% were unemployed, 51% were average monthly income of £279, and 15% has a college degree. In Brazil, career development of most people is characterized by informal discontinuous trajectories and not restricted to have unemployment. It's a main point. In general, interventions in career guidance counseling have been still offered to a minority elite, proposed to middle and high-class youths and graduate adults in search for helping to choose a profession and to play their career respectively. Thus, career guidance and counseling tradition has been focused on employment on people with college education, from middle and upper classes inspired by classical theories from the produced in the Global South, United States and Europe. So it's important to acknowledge that this traditional target population of career guidance and counseling does not correspond to most of younger and adult workers worldwide. Moreover, these theories are usually built by a sample of white and middle-class people from developed countries, of whom career development is characterized by continuous paths accomplished in formal jobs. does not fit vulnerable groups from the global north and most people of the global south. For example, this poses a dilemma for Brazilian researchers and practitioners. Should you just understand and assist 50% of Brazilian population formed by right qualified people, or should you seek to expand research and interventions for the entire population? In a greater or lesser extent, we can extend these questions to all contexts. These slides compare some demographic data regarding the working world between the two developed countries, the United States and UK, and one developing country, Brazil. These data define the characteristics of working in each country and point out a large discrepancy between them, which demonstrates that the huge need for producing theories and practices in a contextualized way by intercultural dialogue. See how the characteristics of the working world in each country will define the types of demands addressed to career guidance and counseling. On one hand, the emerging issues in developed countries are probably regarding formal working relations, autonomy, and freedom of choice. And on the other hand, issues related to the informality of work, low qualifications, and discontinuous in career paths must be more common in vulnerable groups from the global north and most people of the global south. The United States face similar issues to UK, which are quite different from the Brazil issues and most of the countries in the global south. It's important to acknowledge that all these theories come from the global north, in the United States mainly. However, they have been used in contests all over the world. If the United States has produced the main theories in career guidance and counseling, how should these theories can help people in contexts like Brazil? In other words, how can we offer career guidance and counseling in contexts such as Brazilian? If we decide to expand theories and praxis, we need to rethink theories and reconstruct praxis. So we need therefore to produce contextualized career guidance and counseling to help thinking about future projects within the broader working world. How can we possibly do that? We should acknowledge in a more serious manner the implication of context, as Ronald Sultana stated by saying that the context matters, and everyone should speak by his own terms. In this sense, we should also acknowledge that the world is logically diverse, and this diversity provides intelligibility and intentionality to social experiences, including to career guidance and counseling interventions and their outcomes. Boaventura de Souza Santos, a Portuguese sociologist, pointed out that global social injustice is therefore intimately linked to global cognitive injustice. The struggle for global justice must be therefore a struggle for global cognitive justice as well. Theoretical approaches are social and cultural productions, and as a result, the premises and concepts are highly influenced by these factors, which configures a worldwide and a conception of human beings which serve as life guide, generally establish a hierarchy of power over determining who can produce knowledge and which concepts are the true ones. It also defines a dominant symbolic system. The dominant symbolic system forges these concepts, usually led by the global north, and based on that they can be considered true ones. This is the main reason these concepts are not able to fully explain working life and careers of vulnerable groups from the global north and the most people of the global south in a proper and contextualized manner. So, the issue regarding relations between power and production of knowledge has emerged, and from the outset it is necessary to try to answer: who legitimizes who? Who produces knowledge? Who is authorized to produce knowledge? In a very traditional way, science produces knowledge through research, usually developed in universities and research centers. I think we might change this process by posing that knowledge should be produced by a joint action between researchers and everyday agents in an intercultural dialogue, as defined by Boaventura de Souza Santos. In that vein, does science produce data derived from everyday information based on scientific legitimacy, or does science assist in the production of data together with agents of daily life based on scientific and daily legitimacy? Which is the role of research participants? Are they source of information that will be collected by the research, or are they someone who will help in the production of knowledge? In my research practice, I always include participants as co-producer of knowledge. How do I do this? I usually work with open interviews and narrative interviews, and I have 3 steps. First, I ask the participant to tell his/her working story. Second, I transcribe the interview and give back to the participant, asking him to read and tell me if everything's okay, or she wants to do some changing, including or excluding contents. And finally, I make the analysis and discuss if the participant discuss it with the participant to check if it's okay or not. I asked her to reconstruct the proposed analysis aiming at a dialogical understanding between academic and everyday knowledge. This procedure enables contextualized knowledge production and closer to the reality studied. The final analysis is a co-construction between researcher and participant. Boaventura de Souza Santos named this process as diatopical hermeneutics. This is a key principle for intercultural dialogue and refers to the process of interpretation and carried out between persons or groups in different and unequal social cultural positions. D means two, and topoi, positions or knowledge production places. In this relation, intercultural dialogue is generated between different and unequal knowledges, and the production of knowledge takes place more horizontally and democratically, aimed to reduce the pre-established hierarchy of power. Thus, there is no true dialogue without recognizing the other's knowledge, fostering exchange between the thought of master and disciple. However, going further, first by seeking to deconstruct this hierarchical power relationship between the researcher and the research participant, and secondly, by horizontalizing this relationship, breaking the power differences, and assuming that both can produce knowledge. Paraphrasing Paulo Freire, the most important Brazilian educator, we must say that knowledge production has to be forged with others, not for others. In general, who produce knowledge say what is reality, and what is truth, and what's not true, as argued by Barry Irving. This brings us again the already mentioned key issue. Who is authorized to produce knowledge? Who has their production of knowledge legitimized? Every researcher is producing knowledge based on some theories, concepts, and methods. And it's essential to think what kind of knowledge are you producing and for whom. Let me take the career concept as an example. There is a predominance of global north theories in the field of studies and praxis of career, bringing challenges and criticism on this observed trend. First, the career epistemological and theoretical basis is universalized, decontextualized, and poses ways of thinking, knowing, and being through the theoretical approaches, in which culturally specific assumptions from some contexts, from global north mainly, are adapted and legitimized as concepts from the mainstreams. This brings us the issue of universalism versus particularism. Are there universalized concepts that can be applied in any context without changes? Or every concept needs to be contextualized to become valid? Gideon Romani and colleagues argue that theoretical production should have a sensitivity to difference, coupled with interest in identifying unifying or universal concepts. I propose that these principles should always be accomplished by means of an intercultural dialogue, as Santos indicated. Thus, it's important to say there is a distance between the discourses, academic thoughts about the persons, and the social reality itself. Secondly, it privileges universalism over localisms, and consider localism just an example of cultural diversity, as Roland Sultana argued. Thirdly, it considers mainstream theories as neutral constructions and grounded on a supposed official version of reality impose a dominant symbolic system. Fourthly, it presents theories culturally biased, thus creating barriers and recognize the needs of clients who come from a different culture. Fifthly, it focuses on persons regardless of social and cultural context, what draws attention to the individualism, collectivism issues. Sixthly, It fails to recognize difference and diversity in terms of race, ethnicity, gender, social class, sexual orientation, religion, and their intersections. Seventhly, these theories were developed in stable and safe socioeconomic contexts, as distinct from those characterized by vulnerability, informality, and instability. Eighthly, these theories are usually grounded on freedom of choice. This might be restricted in many contexts by socioeconomic conditions, religious values, and duties to the family. And finally, we conclude that mainstream theories disregarded that there are diverse ways to be human and live in a world, as Ronald Sultana proposed. In this regard, I pose a challenging situation for us to think together. How it's possible to understand the social and work reality with alternatives of constructing a career to someone who is young, poor, in the outskirts of Sao Paulo, a city in the global south, and ask for help to a hire counselor. This task can be just achieved by considering his narrative as a narrative reality and a unique opportunity to construct a career in the working world. He is the privileged informant, the one who knows his context and can build his possibilities from this context, as Sergio Rascovan, a career guidance scholar from Argentina, expressed. These theoretical bases have produced career conceptions that ignore diversity by being postulated as a neutral construction and grounded on a supposed official version of reality, in which the concept of career is related to the dominant system. It's important to emphasize that diversity occurs in several dimensions, between different contexts and among people of the same context with distinct characteristics regarding the intersectionality of class, gender, sexuality, race, and ethnicity. This has contributed to the disappearance of cultural difference for local context and has generated oppression and social injustice, to the production of accepted knowledge, theories, and praxis. But what would be the mission of science? Should science reproduce reality? Or should science portray reality and seek to modify it? This issue demands an ethical and political position from the researchers. What do we wish with our research project? And how it make contributions for the society development or reconstruction? Our research has ontological, epistemological, and methodological basis. I would like to invite you to review the basis of your research agenda to understand what the underlying ethical project will be. Furthermore, how does our research project contribute to confront social injustice and foster social justice? In other words, how could the fight for social justice through research activity? We can do that in two ways, in my opinion. At the political level, we can theoretically and technically advise career guidance and counseling practitioners and policymakers. At the academic level, we should encourage exchanges and partnerships between career researchers from various parts of the globe, as well we are doing here. And I thank you very much for that. And for open space for that intercultural dialogue today. And at the epistemological level, we must review career theories based on local context of open words. What seems to be the main issue to be addressed at the epistemological level? As I have already stated, Boaventura de Souza Santos pointed out that the global social injustice is therefore intimately linked to the global cognitive injustice. The struggle for global social injustice must therefore be a struggle for global cognitive justice as well. Cognitive justice is the idea that it's necessary to seek equality between several types of knowledge, scientific or not, of diverse cultural matrices, since it recognizes that science, as it's produced today, serves to maintain social injustice among nations. So it's necessary to recognize local contexts when constructing theories and concepts. There is value in epistemological diversity existing in the world, and avoid hegemonic and universalized career theories, as well as career guidance and counseling practices based on them. This diversity only emerges when studying local realities, because we can only understand people's experience by understanding the contextual epistemological matrix that influence them. According to Santos, the intercultural perspective states that knowledge production is always incomplete, and any generalization of this production is false, because knowledge is always contextual and co-constructed through the relations among the actors involved. The world, however globalized it may seem, is composed of a plurality of cultures. Moreover, each cultural system configures a worldview and a conception of human beings, which serves as a guide and a conception framework for our reflections, decisions, actions, and positions, resulting in our identity constructions. In general, the most part of the countries imports theory from the United States or from Europe. Nevertheless, the entire context in which they are designed is not important along with it. We can summarize 4 ways in which career theories can be imported and employed in a different context from they are produced, namely incorporation, adaptation, refuse, or co-construction. Firstly, import mainstream theories constructed in a context and apply them in another context with no changes, and I name it as incorporation or reproduction without adaptation. Secondly, import mainstream theories and apply them in other contexts with some changes for addressing local peculiarities. I name it as adaptation or reproduction with adaptation. Thirdly, ignore pre-existing mainstream theories and produce new theories from her own context. They are detached from what is produced in the mainstream of career theories. I name it a refuse, isolation, and production. And finally, produce theories through an intercultural dialogue between dominant knowledge from the mainstream theories and contextualized daily life knowledge of their own realities. Intercultural dialogue through co-construction. I believe that the 2 first proposals produce the contextualizations and knowledge. The third proposal does not allow to intercultural dialogue, and the breakdown of the power hierarchy make contests, such as those of Global South, isolated. It's important to note that adaptation and denial are the strategies often used in the Global South, but I believe the 4th proposal opens greater possibilities for conceptual reconstruction and a rebalance of power in the knowledge production process. In a more in-depth way, what would intercultural dialogue be? This principle proposed by Santos aims to facilitate analysis of the relations among different nations and cultures. However, it can be used to understand the production of knowledge in a field of knowledge such as career guidance and counseling, which was one of the purposes of this lecture. Santos stated that production of knowledge is always incomplete, and any universalizing claim is false, because knowledge is always contextual and built on the relationship of all the social actors involved. All knowledge has limits, and their production should be accomplished by means of a dialogue between different knowledge embedded in distinct social practice. Theoretical approaches are social and cultural productions, and as a result, the premises and concepts are highly influenced by these factors. According to Santos, 4 principles underpin an intercultural dialogue. First, recognition of mutual incompleteness. Second, the exchange between different meaning realities, what makes it a dialogical and psychosocial perspective. Third, openness to the interculturality, where one knowledge does not annul the other, but both producing a third kind of knowledge resulting from the encounter. It's defined by the process of co-construction. And finally, hierarchy of contextual knowledge that requires an intercultural translation. Thus, incompleteness would be the base characteristic of the production of knowledge, and the best way of dealing with this incompleteness is to promote the dialogue between the different knowledge associated with the pre-existing praxis and the social discourses in each context or field of knowledge. The aim is not only to avoid universalizing positions, but also to foster intercultural dialogue. Inspired by Paulo Freire and Inácio Martim Baró to recognize Latin American authors, we therefore stated that valid knowledge is therefore contextualized knowledge. It's valid when it considers cultural difference and political difference. It should be oriented toward reality, which taking both as a starting and an arrival point. The discussion of career concept exemplifies the process through which all aspects of career theory must pass. This is not with the intent of replacing it with another set of theories, but of enlarging it so that these theories have explanatory power in other contexts, such as Brazil, for example. It opens space for North-South dialogue, assuming the importance of both knowledge, but without imposing on one another. This dialogue among different knowledge is called, as I have already said, intercultural dialogue, which is embodied in different social practices and different contexts, without the supremacy of one discourse over another. The career concept is one that must go through the process of co-construction, deconstruction, and reconstruction. Everyone can recognize themselves by having a career. Data coming from the context needs to be recognized by the scientist as explanations of a reality. It's from this data that existing concepts can be constructed, deconstructed, and reconstructed, interpreting therefore the reality through these poles, namely the technical knowledge produced by science and the everyday knowledge produced by people within their own contexts. This paradigm changes is essential for the analysis of the career construction in contexts strongly marked by social inequality factors, inequality on income, gender, and access to basic rights, such as Latin America, for example, and contexts of increasing racial and cultural plurality, as it has been happening in Western Europe. Working for social justice is also to work at the epistemological level, to broaden the understanding of both the working world, the career guidance and counseling in other contexts. This expansion involves understanding and reviewing the knowledge positions and powers established by the existing theories. First, it's necessary for scientists to realize that it's a dominant knowledge, and then recognize its incompleteness and need to consider everyday local knowledge as a part of challenging its dominance. Ventura de Souza Santos said, in that sense, dialogical happens when subjects meet to transform the world into collaboration, and the production of knowledge is always a continuous struggle between liberation and adaptation to a perceived logic. Thus, no one set anyone free. No one set himself free. Men liberate themselves in communion, as Paulo Freire stated. I hope I have made clear the basic principles to extend the explanatory power of the theories and in a contextualized way through a North-South intercultural dialogue. Let us now go to the praxis, present a brief example of intercultural approach in career guidance and counseling. It's grounded in two basic principles, psychosocial, hybrid, and intercultural dialogue, 7 basic technical underpinnings, counselor acting as an intermediary, focus on the process, counseling as a successive process of co-construction, diatopic hermeneutics, discursive validation, communitary strategies, and critical consciousness, and 3 main attitudes in conducting career guidance and counseling process. Let me find the slide. The situate knowledge, intercultural views, actions, interventions should be extended to the social, since our proposal considers that psychological or psychosocial changes are insufficient to make reconstructions possible, and changes in the socioeconomic and work context are required. We hold the logic of co-construction through diatopic hermeneutics to foster intercultural dialogue and hybrid outcomes. In concluding, We'll take two ideas from Ronald Sultana to synthesize the need to consider and legitimize theoretical productions from Global North. First, context matters. And secondly, if the South may speak by its own terms, we realize that another world is possible beyond our universalist theories. This slide presents a possible line of reasoning to substantiate the need for intercultural dialogue in counseling. First, we are all different. Second, this should not be a problem. Third, people have similarities and singularities. Fourth, we need to consider that in our theories, concepts, and praxis. Fifth, we should not only focus on the similarities. Sixth, we should not only understand our clients by our own point of view and by mainstream concepts. 7, we need to co-construct understandings and praxis by an intercultural dialogue to achieve these conceptions. And I close my speech with another Tarsila painting. This one called Anthropophagy. That's the man from Nabapuru painting mixed with a woman to create the world as a hybrid, and a picture of my university. And I thank you very much for your opportunity, and I'm open for chatting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marcelo, for that. So I'm just going to reshare my slides here. And to remind you that we're now going to take some questions for Marcelo. So there are two ways of doing this. You can either drop the questions into the chat or use the QR code for the Padlet that's put on this slide as well. So let's just see if we've got any questions here. I think not just questions, Marcelo, but thank you. People are starting to post that into the chat as well. But who'd like to start us with a question? Any questions? I'll start us off with a question then, Marcelo, if that's okay. So it was a really insightful and interesting presentation. And I think what I gained from that was a real way of thinking about practical career guidance and development activities. Have you been applying this in practice? Have you seen this working in practice, and what have been the results of that?
Yeah, some of my work is related to the praxis, and I think to articulate and put together praxis and theoretical production, and we are trying to develop intercultural career guidance praxis. And the first step is to recognize as I already said, the knowledge of the people that we are trying to assist, because it is in contexts like ours in Brazil, for example. And I am a man from the middle class. I am in a university. I know that in my position is a privileged position in our country. And some people that look for a career guidance is from the lower class, and people that are in vulnerable situations and have different kind of opportunities in the working world. And this working world, of course, we studied a lot about the work world in general, but it's difficult to understand the real working world without being there. And what the first step that we try to do it's to co-construct the understanding of this working world, because we we know about the theory and the structure of the working world, and the people that come from these different kind of this diverse working world and know the praxis. They are living in this working world, and for me, the first step for intercultural dialogue and then another thing that we are doing is to get together with some people from these vulnerable areas from our city, for example, and establish a dialogue to understand the kind of strategies that for example, social movements as Black movement or feminist movement or neighborhood movement and the labor movement, that they have some different kind of strategies to understand the world, to action and the world, and we establish a partnership, and we understand how they for example work with the young people, and then we tell how we work, and then they tell how they work, and we'll try to create or to construct a strategy, a mutual strategy between us. And I think it's a more contextualized way to do career guidance and counseling. It's just a brief example, but I think it's the way that we're trying to put in action our theoretical and conceptual ideas.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I can see that Bruna Rodriguez has posted a question. She feels that you've partly answered it already, but I think the question that she's posed is probably something that many of our colleagues from around the world that have joined the lecture will sort of empathise with, and that is that not all schools have got career guidance practitioners working in them, and poses the question, how can we engage people's interest in providing career guidance to young people in schools? And I wondered if you felt your approach, this kind of intercultural dialogue, is something that would be attractive to more practitioners if we were able to promote it and to teach people how to do it. Do you think that might be something that would have an appeal?
Okay, and I think if I understand the question, I think the school is a great place to 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 do guidance, and I think it's the first place in thinking about the life cycle. I think it's the first place, and for example, in our country, we don't have career guidance public policies. We never had this, and we only have a few offer of career guidance in schools, mainly in the private sector of the schools, and the main sector or the large sector in the of our schools in the public sector, and we're trying to do some partnership with government to offer, but I think it's a big challenge, because we are nowadays going through a very changing in our education system, and the first time in our history we have some kind of career guidance or something like a career education inside our schools, and for me it's a big opportunity to do that. But I think we need to hear our students from the different levels and different ages, and we're trying to listen to the teachers, and the teachers know a lot about the livelihood of our students, and try to do trying to rebuild our strategies in this dialogue. I think this is the main principle, to listen to people and try to rebuild or reconstruct our strategies in mutual relation, in a partnership. I think it's the best way to do that.
Oh,
I
okay,
think there is
thank you
another
for that.
question, but
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, I'm just looking at the Padlet, and certainly there's a recognition here that the training that we undertake in the global north often is dominated, the training that we provide to practitioners is often dominated by very traditional theories, and that we need to have a broader range of theories which better reflect the complexity of our clients and the context that they find themselves in. So that's for sure coming through. Somebody's asked, I'm interested in your thoughts about practitioners' points of view when delivering guidance. So what can practitioners do to develop other perspectives from which to better understand their clients? So I guess in part you've kind of answered that, but is there anything else you think maybe practical advice we can give to practitioners and those that are training practitioners in order to help them with this?
Let me see if I understand. I think we're trying to do some kind of changes in our country. Our just an example. Our country has the traditional, the mainstream theories in career guidance and counseling as the main theories that we have been using in our country. So the trait factor approach, the developmental approach, nowadays the life designing approach is the main approach that we are using in our country, and they are constructing in developed countries, and in the most part of the globe are not from the developed context. So we need to try to understand that, for example, let me give an example. I think this is a better way to explain what I intend to do. And in some countries, employment and continuous career is the main path for building your working life. Is completely different in our country. For example, it's as a is the most people constructing the working life in a discontinuous way, not by employment, and we can see these things, this construction, two ways. And the first way is not a very good way, so we need to try to changes and try to help them to create a more continuous working life. But it's not depend on career guidance or career practitioners, and it's depend more on the government, on the socio-economic conditions. And I think we need to understand another. Okay, you are in the informal sector, so how can we empower you? How can we enhance or develop or help you to develop better conditions or work conditions in the informal sector? And we need to understand what is to build a career or build a working life in the formal sector. So I think that in our country, for example, we have nowadays, as I think I showed in one slide, that between 40 and 50% of people working nowadays in our country is working in the informality, is working in the formal sector. So it's another way to build their working life. So how can we help these people? I think that the best way is not to tell him, oh, we need to get a job. We need to try to build a more continuous trajectory. They're not able to do that because of the socioeconomic conditions. Our labor market is very, very vulnerable nowadays. So I think we need to expand our ideas and think there are other ways to build the working life, as I mentioned by Ronald Sultan in one of my slides.
Mm. Okay, that's great. Thank you. I'm conscious of the time. We'll take Deirdre's question next. She asks, where are the major gaps in careers research from your perspective, Marcelo?
I think I don't know if it's a gap, but I think it's a way of building knowledge. It's a way of producing knowledge. That's considered that is a universalized knowledge. This knowledge can be applied in any context around the globe. For example, the idea of career, and I think the idea of career is produced in developed countries, and we can use this idea in global south, for example. But I think we need to reconstruct this idea and expand this idea. I think I don't know it's a gap, but I think it's we need to try to understand that there is different ways of building careers, and we need to consider that what Boaventura de Souza Santos, that our knowledge, our understanding is always incomplete. When we assume that, I think we can do a better practice. We can build better theories or I don't know it's better, but more contextualized theories and concepts that can correspond or can fit or suit well with every people around the world.
Okay, thank you very much, Marcelo. And I think we'll finish our questioning there. It feels like an interrogation, I feel, sorry, but some really interesting comments in the chat as well, which you might want to have a look at in due course as well. But I'm going to draw your questions to an end now, and I'm going to ask my colleague, Professor Tristram Hooley, now to reflect on your lecture, Marcelo, and to give the vote of thanks. So, Tristram, can I ask you to take over here then?
Hi there, and hi Marcelo. That was a great lecture, and I don't know what I can add to it, but I'll just give you a few thoughts as that it prompted in me. I suppose what you ask us to think about is not easy. It's not a simple thing. You don't give us a simple answer to some of these problems. What you ask us to think about actually is how is knowledge, how is reality in fact constructed? And I think that's something that the career guidance and the kind of the tradition, the sort of positivist tradition of research and theory that we have doesn't think about enough. And when there are people who start thinking about it, as some of the kind of career construction theorists did, they then divorce it from context. And you remind us that yes, our careers and our process of careering is a process of creating reality, of creating the knowledge that we need to live and thrive and survive in the world. And because of that, career guidance or career counselling is a process of helping people to do this. And that's where we draw this kind of connection to social justice, because we're about helping people to live and thrive in a world which often seems to sort of be constructed to prevent them from doing that. And that, I think, is very, very, very challenging. But what I think is so powerful about your work is that you remind us that there is no one answer to that. There's no one, so that kind of tradition that we draw, which is largely from North America, that is insufficient to give us the answers to these problems. But equally, so are traditions which are rooted in one culture or one context, because you remind us all the time that it's this intercultural dialogue, it's this connection between the theories of the North and the theories of the South, but also that intercultural dialogue between professional interactions with ordinary people, with people who might be poor, who might not have an education, and so on. And you write very, very powerfully about that. And I think at iCeGS we became an international centre. I don't know, Nikki and Siobhan probably will know how many years ago it was, but it was many years ago. And I think one of the things that we've always been striving to do in being an international centre is to kind of listen more than we talk, and to learn more than we preach about the best way to do things, because we want to be an international centre. We want to be part of, Siobhan says we became an international centre in 2008. Excellent. But we want to, when we're an international centre, we want to be part of these global conversations, to be part of this intercultural dialogue that you talk about, and not to be a kind of an imperialist actor that's saying this is the way that you organize this activity of career guidance. So I think you have crystallized many of these ideas that I think we felt intrinsically, but we weren't necessarily always able to put into words. I think you've crystallized them in what you've said and in the work that you've written, and I would really thank you so much for what you brought. I hope that you will continue to remain in dialogue with us in iCeGS and more widely in the whole community that's assembled here today. It's been a fantastic lecture. It's been a window into a different world than the one that we normally inhabit, and we thank you wholeheartedly for that.
Thank you very much for that, Tristram, and I know that Siobhan and I join with you in thanking Marcelo on behalf of the centre as well. So fantastic. I've got loads of food for thought, and I know that our students are going to benefit from this lecture, because some of them have been here and some of them will be able to download the recording, but because we'll be incorporating some of these big ideas into our teaching approaches as well. So thank you very much. I've got a couple of small things to say. Before I do, did you want to come back there at all, Marcelo, and just respond to those things? Anything you want to say?
No, just thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm very, very glad with this opportunity and this exchange. I think we can continue to do that.
For sure, and one of the things we're hoping, Marcelo, is that you'll work with us to write a paper on the back of this lecture, okay, so that people will have an opportunity to delve into these ideas in more detail as well. So thank you very much. But of course, the work of iCeGS doesn't stop. We go on and on trying to develop people's insights to career development around the world, and we've got some future events coming up that I just want you all to be aware of. This year iCeGS will be working with the Career Development Institute again on the International Practitioner Research Conference, which will take place on February the 24th, 2022. But the great news is that it's not just us two partners doing this year. We've been lucky to be joined by colleagues from NICEC and from AGCAS, and so this truly does reflect all parts of the sector in the UK, but also beyond. We've got an international panel and what have you, some seminars as well, which will appeal globally to practitioners who are just becoming really curious and wanting to develop the evidence base. So please join us for that. We've also got the Cdi Student Conference coming up. And of course, now is the time, if you're excited by what you've been hearing, you may be a careers leader and you want to take up career leaders training. Well, iCeGS is delivering that on behalf of the Careers and Enterprise Company. And of course, we've got our master's programme in careers education and coaching, incorporates the qualification in career development, and we're now recruiting to that for next September. So if any of you would like to have a conversation around that, then we're more than happy to talk to you about those opportunities. we will be writing out to you today, well, probably not today actually, over the course of the next few days, with several things. The first will be our annual review, which you will get as a PDF. It's just been published today, so you'll be the first recipients of that, and that summarises everything that iCeGS has been doing over the last year. And you know, once you've got that, please share that as well amongst colleagues. We're happy for that to be shared. The other thing that you'll be getting is an invitation to complete our evaluation of the annual lecture. You can do that either by following the link in the email, or indeed there's another QR code here. You can do it right now if you would like to. But it is super important that you do complete these for us, because it does help us to improve our programmes, and it also gives us ideas of who you'd like to hear at next year's annual lecture. So please do that as well. I guess the thing to say is a big thank you again. As I mentioned earlier on, perhaps you weren't here at the start, the recording of this will be put up along with Marcelo's slides onto the iCeGS website as soon as we've had a chance to process that, so you will be able to access it at a later date. But I'm sure I can see all the comments coming up in the chat here. Lots of thanks to you, Marcelo. We'll be in touch shortly. Yeah, it's been a great lecture. We've all enjoyed it very much, and thank you so much for your time today, and thank you everybody for attending. Thank you.